So here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It is another amazing episode of Keeping It Rio. And today, this is going to be a really good one. I'm confident because our guest has already won the award for being the longest distance. I checked it out today, and I think you're just a shade under 7,000 miles away from where I'm sitting right now. So that's pretty good. I appreciate that. And I'd like to welcome to the program today, Miss Kat Finnerty. Kat, welcome to Keeping It Rio. How are you today?
I'm really awesome. Chuck, how are you going?
Oh, this is incredible. I'm talking to someone that's 7,000 miles away. So, can you tell me exactly where in the world you are sitting right now? Because I'm super jealous of the background. I wish that mine resembled that a little bit more than the rainstorm I got going outside here in Texas. But where are you coming to us from in the world?
I am in a country that the WHO is classified as the most disaster-prone country in the world. So I'm in a country called Vanuatu. I live on a little island called Espiritu Santo, and I'm in an area called Turtle Bay. So this bay, and it won't be surprising if you might see turtles pop up behind me because we have tons of turtles here. So that's where I am. I'm in Turtle Bay in Espiritu Santo in the country of Vanuatu.
Wow. So that's pretty amazing. Turtle Bay is a beautiful place. I can clearly see that. And
Hmm.
just to have those
It
turtles is
is.
probably one of the coolest things to wake up and see. Um, Let me ask you this. Were you born there, or how did you end up in a place so far away?
That's a great question. I'm actually from Toronto, but then I lived in Australia for 20 years. So I came over here in 2019 and I came for 1 week to publish my book. My book was basically finished, and I had a friend that was in publishing, and he said, and he has a plantation close to this island on another island. He said, "Why don't you come over to the plantation for Christmas and we'll finish off, put the finishing touches on your book, and we'll publish it." And I said, "Sure." So I came over for a week to finish my book, which was called Never Let a Good Disaster Go to Waste. And then I met a guy. And then, of course, disaster struck, COVID. And I then didn't leave because the country got shut down really early. We didn't have COVID here. We only got COVID here maybe 7, 8 months ago. So the country was shut down hard for a long time. And so, yeah, so I came over for a week and I ended up getting stranded on an island for like 2.5 years. So it was amazing. I was very lucky to be in the most disaster prone country. Um, and it was funny because during that 2.5 years, I had two tsunamis. I had about 400 earthquakes. We had a category 5 cyclone come through during COVID, so nobody could come help. I've had volcanoes. I've had everything.
Man, and I'm over here complaining that it's raining outside. So I apologize, Mother Nature. That's incredible, though. So you're going over for a week just to kind of get away. And the irony is the title of your book. Um, you've already written a book at this point, and you end up in the most disaster-prone place in the world. Like that's just crazy blind luck, or is that something that you were aware of? Did you realize after the fact, like, uh-oh, this is going to be kind of fun. I'm going to experience a lot of cool things here.
Absolutely. I classify myself as a master of disaster, but I had no idea Vanuatu was classified as the most disaster-prone country in the world until I'd been here for a few months, and someone told me, and I was like, "That's so ironic that I just wrote a book called Never Let a Good Disaster Go to Waste." And the ironic thing is I met a guy when I was over here who's an Australian, and I hadn't quite published my book yet. I just had a few things I wanted to wrap up. And the man I met is actually a writer. And I asked him to have a look at my book, and he said, "I can't, I'm too busy." And then COVID hit. And then, of course, he lost his business because he had adventure tours in Vanuatu. And that finished as soon as COVID hit, and no tourists were left. So he had plenty of time to help me with my book. And he basically ripped it up, and we started all over again. So the book is actually just set to be published very shortly in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So probably end of March, beginning of April, the book will be coming out.
That's amazing. So I guess the question has to be asked then, since you were already preparing to do this before you got to the disaster prone area, what was the inspiration to write the book in the first place? And, tell me a little bit about the process or the story in your life that led to you writing that book, because that's kind of a unique, that's a topic that not too many people really, choose to write about, or, a lot of people try to stay away from a good disaster. So what steered you in that direction and made you become a master of disaster?
Can I ask you a question, Jack?
Yes, you may.
Have you ever been betrayed
Many, many
or lied to
times.
or cheated on?
Yeah, a couple times.
Sure. So the reason for my book originally, so on my 40th birthday, I'm now 50, so 10 years ago, on my 40th birthday, I was in the hospital. I was part of a 2-year trial. I was in a double placebo-blinded trial to widen the veins in my neck to see if it would cure me of MS. I was diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis, when I was 24, until I'd be in a wheelchair by the time I was 40. So I was lying there in the hospital about to undergo this procedure, and I didn't know if I was a placebo or not. And my daughter rang me to say happy birthday. And then she said, "Hey, mommy, somebody, your friend slept over in your bed last night." I'm like, "Really?" Okay. So it was a girlfriend. And I got home and I took my husband's phone. He happened to leave it on the counter while he went out for a minute. And I looked at the phone. I was like, "Oh my God, okay, there's definitely an affair here." And I was married for 15 years, 3 kids. I was one of those that went like, that happens to other people, but things like that do not happen to me. And I was completely and utterly devastated. And he got home and he saw me holding his phone and he took his phone. He said, "I love her. I'm leaving you. It's over," and walked out the door. So I was completely devastated. I wanted to drink every bottle of wine in my house and just eat all the chocolate and just like, I didn't know what to do. And then after 12 hours of contemplating it, I was awake all night. By the time the sun rose, I was over it. I reflected on every single disaster in my life, and I was like happy by the time 12 hours came around. I had converted it, I transformed it. And I woke up in the morning, I'm like, I'm going to write a book, How to Get Over Betrayal in 12 Hours, because you have a choice to suffer for 12 hours, 12 days, 12 years, or a lifetime. And I actually know how to get over it in 12 hours. And I need to tell people because people suffer too long for these sorts of things. So that was the inspiration for Never Let a Good Disaster Go to Waste.
Wow. And that's extremely powerful, and it's life-changing stuff for sure. And I'm sorry that you had to go through that, but at the end of the day, maybe that ended up being your greatest blessing. Who knows? I hope that ends up being your
Well,
greatest
I'm not
blessing.
complaining.
Right. And I mean, anybody that gets to go on vacation, that's like the greatest Gilligan's Island episode of all time right there. And you get to live it every single day. So I think at the end,
I
you
do.
probably were the winner there. And it's cool to see people overcome things. Let me ask you a little bit about that process though. You just told me that you overcame a completely life-shattering event, something that you had been accustomed to for 15 years and had gone through the ups and downs, and you got over it in 12 hours. Let me ask you this first. Have you ever had any kind of relapses or anything like that? Or are you like legitimately over this in 12 hours?
That's a great question, Chuck. So what I did over the 12 hours is I reflected on all these things, all my past disasters. I basically came up with 12 principles. And absolutely, it's not like I got over it and all of a sudden, the angels were singing and I was content. But of course, when you're dealing with 3 children and a separation, there's a lot of bumps in the road. So I always say, just take your 12 hours. Take your 12 hours, apply. I kept applying my different principles of my 12 principles. And every time I would do that, I could get over that thing. So, and that's what I do all the time. Whenever disaster strikes, I always reflect on my 12 principles and then I can transform it usually within, well, if it takes 12 hours, that's a long time. But each disaster that happens, I'm like, I'm the master of this disaster. I can reframe this. And like you said, you know, everything worked out, and I wouldn't say I'm a winner, but it's like I chose to not dwell in anger and bitterness and hatred. I chose to send them love, be happy for them, so then I could move on with my life.
I absolutely love that mindset. And that is so crucial in this world because so many people do get consumed and they just let things just absolutely destroy them and eat them up. And being able to let go of things is so crucial. And as I get older and continue to mature, I realize that, it's like we're not children anymore. We realize, okay, there is an ending point. I've got friends that aren't with me anymore, that haven't made it as long in this
Mhm.
world as I have. And you start to realize, tomorrow's not a guarantee. So it's very good to get rid of all that stuff, to make sure that you can at least, do your part to feel happy in this world for the short period of time that we have. So kudos to you, because I know that's not easy. Like you said, having children, and that just makes the equation that much more difficult. Um, I got to ask, your kids, do they live there with you on the island? Are they over in Canada? Where are they at?
So, when I moved here, or when I came for the holiday, my daughter was just going into her last year of high school, and my two boys were already away at university. So, my daughter stayed with her dad for that year, and then she joined the army. So my three kids, my one son's traveling Europe, my eldest son, and one son's in university still in Australia, and my other daughter's in the army in Australia. So I always brought my kids up to be resilient anyway, although I always said to them, if you want me to come home, I'll move heaven and earth. I'll find a flight, like sometimes the army would come in and get people out. And I said, look, I'll come home if you need me. They're like, Mom, gosh, stay there. We're fine. So yeah, they were totally fine.
And it gives an amazing place to come visit for the holidays, for sure.
Yeah.
There's a built-in
Yeah.
excuse every year. So that's pretty amazing. And it's
Yeah.
cool that your children have, grown up, and that you raise them to be so, adventurous. That's a lot of different things going on. And that's pretty cool. Most people never leave their hometowns. And I love hearing stuff like that, because it's just, but again, short time on this earth. Let's enjoy it. Let's experience everything possible and have a good time with it. So that's pretty good stuff. Um,
Hmm.
let me get back around to you now living in the most disaster prone country in the world. Um, you've experienced quite a bit in the 2 years plus that you've been there. Like, how does that go down? I mean, are you guys prepared for the absolute worst at all times? Do you have signs and symptoms that things are going to come? Obviously, you've got to be expecting it. What's it like going through a disaster in the middle of the ocean, knowing that you're probably not going to be able to get help in certain circumstances, like you said? And what is I guess the word would be the community. What is the community like there? Do you all band together? What are the people that reside in your hometown? What are they like? What's the community like there? I know, here in the United States, when we have a problem, people start catching buildings on fire, throwing bricks through windows and doing stupid things. Maybe it's different 7,000 miles away. What do you say?
It's a million times different. 100 gazillion times different. For example, Cyclone Harold hit in April 2020, so it was during COVID. So there was no help from the outside world. It was Category 5, and it pretty much flattened the island. Now, most people here, I'd say 90% of the people that live on this island, at the time, there was probably maybe 100 expats that lived here, and the rest of the people were locals, which we call Ni Vanuatu. Um, Most people here have no power anyway, and they all most live in bamboo huts or like matting. They have leaf roofs, Natangora roofs, and mats for walls. So their houses just get blown away, like literally. Uh, Expats that live in like a concrete house, their houses mostly stood up, but that was the most extraordinary thing. So during Harold, a lot of people's properties got destroyed. A lot of trees fell down on houses. There was no power for over a month. But it's funny because the local people here have no power. 90% of the people that live on this island have no power. They don't have running water. They don't have taps. You don't turn on a tap and get water. You go and collect it from somewhere. You use, wood for your fire. Nobody has like a kitchen. It's just a fire outside underneath a shelter that they've built. So after Cyclone Harold, it was really interesting to see the reaction because the Ni Vanuatu that lost their whole houses, which just blew away, and they're kind of used to it. So they're like, my house blew down, but it's okay. I'll build another one. But it was the expats that were really upset and really, oh, my business is destroyed. I got to have trees down, and they didn't handle it well. The Nevans handled it amazingly. So it was really interesting to watch the two different reactions. I mean, yes, a lot of expats had a lot more money invested, but the reactions were really interesting to watch, where the Ni Vanuatus are so resilient, and they just, they know how to find food, even though their gardens were ruined. They know to eat the tops of coconuts and be able to forage in the gardens. And funnily enough, Chuck, I just went this weekend to a village, and it's a traditional village. So they just wear grass skirts. They wear like three branches in the front and three branches in the back, the women, and the men wear a bit of cloth, and that's all they wear. And they don't go to school, they don't have religion, and they just exist in this village, and everything that they eat is just stuff they find on the land around them.
Wow. It's amazing because, I live here in San Antonio, Texas, and you don't understand really that stuff like that really exists in this world unless you've seen it, and that's absolutely amazing. I have to also give a huge shout out to whoever provides your internet there, because you've got an amazing internet connection. I'll give you credit. I mean, whoever did the internet service, for 90% of the country not having power, they found a good way to make this video chat stuff possible. So that's pretty amazing in its own as well. Let me ask
that's
this:
a challenge here.
Yeah, I guarantee, right? Like, I can't even imagine how this is possible.
We have a
but
satellite.
this is amazing. So let me ask you this: you obviously you're in a nice place where your home probably didn't blow over and you didn't have to rebuild everything, but when the disasters hit to that magnitude and people can't get out, people can't come in, you hit on it a little bit. Most of the homes are built from stuff that's gathered from the land, but building materials and things of that nature, what does that look like, and how long does it take for a complete village that's been completely destroyed to band together and build itself back like it was never affected? Because I'm sure they've probably, unfortunately, gotten pretty good at this over the course of time. Probably has happened several times.
This village I was just at too is interesting. This man's house was getting older, so he just burnt it to the ground and started again. I'm like, how long is that going to take you? He's like, about a month. So they just burn it down. And very interesting. We were actually building a house during COVID and during all this. And you're talking about getting materials in. It was extremely difficult. Shipments from China, if you want to get like Rio or concrete or like cement or anything like that, it just, things that would take 2 months took over a year. So we had to really get inventive with building. We built a new 4-bedroom home, and we had to get really inventive with what we were doing. It was very fortunate that so many massive trees got blown down because we were able to mill them, and that was a lot of the wood that we used in the house. So yeah, but a village, look, they can like whip up a house probably, in about 3-4 weeks. A lot of people just live in a cave. Here, people don't really, a lot of them just sleep on mats they weave, but they don't have a lot of things, so it doesn't, and they're happy just sleeping on a mat on the ground. So it's their houses are very simple here.
That's such a beautiful thing, that still in this world, there are people that are just happy to lay on a mat on the ground. I mean, I'm here in America, and it's like, we're very spoiled, and everybody here complains over the smallest little thing. And I can't even imagine. I last year, this is crazy. Okay. We had it was the biggest ice storm in the history of Texas or something. I don't know what everything's a catastrophe if you watch the news here. So I lived in a home over in College Station, Texas, and for about 4 days, the power would go on and off, and it was controlled to where they would turn it on for like 5 minutes and then turn it off for 2 hours. You'd get just enough to where you could, see what's going on real quick, and then they turn off. And I remember being so annoyed, thinking to myself, I pay this much money for my electric and this and that, blah, blah, blah. This is so primitive. I can't believe that we live in a time where just being cold makes the power go out, And then here you are, a completely different world away. And it amazes me to think, that, wow, how small-minded of me and how selfish, because there's people in this world that literally are probably eating bugs and debris that they find on the ground that are just happy to be here. And that's very beautiful. And it's amazing that you've been able to adapt. Obviously, 2.5 years. I'm guessing at this point, you probably could go back home if you wanted. But it sounds like you've made yourself a 4-bedroom home there, and you plan on staying there for the rest of your life?
Actually, I did go back to Canada in July. So I went back there for 3 months. So I have left since 2019. I do plan, I run yoga retreats, and my books are about to come out. So I've got 2 books. My Never Let a Good Disaster Go to Waste coming out, followed up with my second book, which is called How to Get Over Betrayal in 12 Hours, a survival guide for the soul. So both those books will be coming out, and I'll be doing world tours, traveling with promoting my books and running my yoga retreats. So another thing, all the money coming in from the books is going to chicken projects I have here. So really interesting. When I first got here, people really live for today. They don't think about tomorrow. So everyone's got chickens, but nobody understands how to put them in a house to eat their eggs. And so there's a real lacking of protein in the diet. So I'm actually trying to build chicken pens and get chickens in and teach them how to make food for the chickens, which is basically maggots. And so they can feed the chickens and then get eggs, so they have protein daily. Because although this is beautiful and we have all this ocean here, a lot of the fish have a disease called secatera because of the warming of the ocean and the overfishing. The reefs, the coral reefs, aren't healthy. They give off a bloom that's toxic. The fish eat them, and then it poisons the people. So even though there is some fish, there's not a lot of fish, and what is there, a lot of it's poison. So they really need another protein source. So my passion is to actually help bring that protein source here with the eggs.
That's incredible. And I mean, wow, what a noble thing to do, because I mean, that literally is going to change. That's going to change everything for the entire community, the way that they live. So that's incredible. Kudos to you for that.
Well, I'll tell you something, Chuck. I've seen a lot in my travels, but this weekend I was, like I told you, in this traditional village, and I've seen a lot of people picking knits out of their kids' hair, and all the kids sit and pick knits out of the hair. But this weekend was the first time I saw a child pick a knit out of another child's hair and eat it. And I thought, never let a good protein source go to waste. And that's when I really thought, oh gosh. And they did. They had chickens everywhere, but they don't have any protein. So yeah, I don't know what to say. So, I mean, you don't want to change all of tradition, and you don't want to sort of go in and change people's lives too much, because then it's like, oh, I know how to do things better. It's not so much about that. There is a lot of underdeveloped brains in babies because the mothers just eat carbohydrates. So I'll tell you what, if you're on a low carb diet, you don't want to go to a village here, because all they eat is carbs. Which is, factors into brain development, and children are malnourished up to about the age of 2, but then they have morbid obesity on the other end because they just overconsume carbs. So yeah, anyway, the average life expectancy here is about 60 because of the diet, even though they don't eat junk food. They're not exposed. They don't know what McDonald's is. They've never heard of McDonald's ever. They have no concept of Kentucky Fried Chicken or fast food. Like, there's no concept of that here.
Wow, that's amazing. Again, for me to even fathom that that's a thing, that there's a place in this world where someone is lucky enough not to have heard of McDonald's. But there you go. You live in paradise. It's it's really, I mean, it's sad to a degree, but it's so beautiful as well. Like you say, that they have such a short lifespan, but enjoy all that. Let me ask this: when you're bringing something in that's going to change people's lives for the better, but they're not used to it, and this is definitely probably a situation where I'm having to assume that English is not the primary language, and if it is, it's probably not super well refined. What about communication and being able to convey what you're trying to do and show that it's for the betterment of the entire community? What kind of feedback do you get, or do the people, do they appreciate it? Do they understand that you're there to help them and they feel, hey, this is good? Or, do you ever get any kind of blowback like, hey, we've been here long time, and we know what we're doing, and who are you to try and change our life? Like you said, what's that experience been like with the natives and your interactions with them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. First of all, people here are always open and willing to learn. People here are very happy and they love learning new things and they love the concept. They all eat eggs, but they go and buy them from somewhere that someone knows how to get them, or from Chinese shops. So they all eat eggs. They all use eggs. So I shouldn't say they all. Many people do eat eggs and buy eggs. They just don't know how to keep them at home. They find them. They have chickens, so they might find the odd egg in the bush, but they don't know how to like keep them in a house. So yeah, no, they're very open and willing, and everyone you speak to is like, oh, I want that. They really want to learn how to do it. So it's not like they look at you and go, oh, how dare you come in. And the language they speak here is called, well, first of all, there's 83 islands in Vanuatu, and there's about 250 different dialects, or what they just call language. So the languages here don't have language, they just call it language. So there's about 250 different languages here, but pretty much everyone speaks Bishlama. The people in this village this weekend didn't, and Bishlama is a fairly simple, easy language to grasp. It's got a lot of It's called Pidgin English, so it's pretty much a bit of English and French, and it's pretty easy to. I speak a little bit now, and so it's not too hard to convey what you're trying to do.
That's awesome. And I figured you were going to say that. I have to assume that anybody that realizes that you're trying to help them would be fairly receptive to that. And that's amazing, because it is changing a lot of lives, and they're going to be exposed to something that they wouldn't have had it not been for you specifically. So that's an amazing mark to leave anywhere in the world, especially, a place so far away where they've seen so much trouble and disaster. So that's really something to give you a round of applause for, Kat.
Look, they wouldn't see it like that. People here are very happy. They're very content. I think it's because I think what's happened for me, I feel in Western civilization, there's been such a breakdown of community, where here there's a strong sense of community. So when you're born, you have many mummies and many daddies. Like every uncle is basically a dad, and your mom's sisters are all your mothers. So automatically, you have so many dads, so many moms. You never feel alone. You have so many brothers, so many sisters, because you don't call cousins. They're all brothers and sisters. So here there's such a huge sense of community and belonging. They don't really have drugs here. They all drink something called kava, which is a root that they pound, and then they drink the juice of it. But I mean, other than maybe a bit of marijuana, which is not really around, there's no drugs. Nobody really can afford alcohol, so there's not that kind of problem here at all.
Yeah, just people living and getting along. And I think that that's probably what this earth was intended for. And at least somebody somewhere still taking heed and living that way. That's really cool. Let's shift gears just a tad bit. So you've got a couple books that you've written that you're getting ready to release here in the next month or so. Tell me a little bit about the book writing process. I've had a bunch of different authors on Keepin It Rio, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the people I've had on here definitely have been amazing, way above my my skill level. But I've had a lot of different authors, some bestsellers and things like that. And everybody seems to have a little bit different process that they went through when they did it. I've had people that went up in the mountains for, 2 weeks by themselves and basically lived in a cave. And I've had people that have had other people write it for them, through dictation. What has your experience been like as far as, we'll do the first book. The second one, they say, is always a little bit easier because you've been through all the bumps. But the first book, tell me a little bit about what you went through, how that process went. Did you write that book yourself? And, what does it look like to write a book? I'm sure you're going to write a bestseller here. I know I'm going to buy a copy, and hopefully everybody that sees this episode does as well. What does it take to pen a masterpiece like that?
Well, that's a really interesting question, Chuck. So on my 40th birthday, I decided I'm going to write a book, How to Get Over Betrayal in 12 Hours, well, the day after my birthday. And then I thought, it's only going to take me 12 hours to write it. I'm just going to write down what I did over the 12 hours, just a quick, easy how-to book. So anyway, I kept telling everyone, I'm writing this book. But all I ever wrote was maybe like a page. So then after 5, 6 years, I was like, this is ridiculous. I've told everyone for 5 years I'm writing a book, but I have not written a book. So I thought, I'm not going to work another day until I finish my book. It's going to take me 12 hours. So I thought, I'm going to go to Bali, just like Eat, Pray, Love. I'm going to go to Bali and I'm going to take my 12 hours and I'm going to find somewhere to write my book. So I go to Ubud, except for the lady that was staying in the room next to me. She never stopped talking, and and she was like, Kat, do you want to go to yoga? Do you want to go here, there? And I'm really easily led. Like, my arm can be easily twisted. And I'm someone that the hardest thing for me is bum glue, to sit in one spot. So I'm like, yeah, I'll go here, I'll go there. Anyway, this one day I met this most amazing, this gorgeous guy saved me from getting hit by this motorbike this one day. And he said to me, who are you? What are you doing in Bali? And I said, oh, my name's Kat and I'm writing this book. And he said, well, my name's Alex, and I'd love to help you, And I said, oh, that's great, but I can't write a book in Ubud. I need to go somewhere quieter than here. So I said, I'm going to go to a little island called Limbagan. And he goes, I'll come with you. So a week later, he happens to come with me to this island. And it turns out he just sold his company to GoDaddy just before then, and for millions of dollars. He was a high-priced business coach, and he was on this spiritual journey. So he was helping me every day on this island, just the 3 huts. So he was in one hut, I was in one hut, and every day we'd be on the beach. And one day I started reading my stuff, and he goes, Kat, your work is shit. You need a copy editor. And I'm like, okay. So the lady in the third hut walks by. She goes, what are you two doing every day? I said, well, I'm writing a book and Alex is helping me. And she said, I'm a copy editor. I'd love to help you. I'm like, wonderful. So I said, look, I'm still writing it, but it's only going to take me 12 hours. I just have to really focus. She goes, look, I'm moving to Noosa, back to Noosa in Australia. Come to Noosa with your book finished and I'll copy edit it for you. I'm like, done. Like, I'll get it done this week. So this is back in the beginning of 2019. So in 2019, in the beginning of the year, I went to visit her and to finish my book. And she's like, is it finished? I'm like, no. But she was dog sitting in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, you're dog sitting. I can totally finish my book dog sitting. Like, there's nothing to do. No bars to go to, no cocktails. That's just like, we're going to write. So I was there. It turns out she got easily distracted too. But so we did some writing and almost finished. And then one day she got a phone call from this man, and it was a friend of hers who was had a house in Noosa on the same street as Pat Rafter. Anyway, he was there for a colonoscopy, and he said, can you pick me up for a colonoscopy? And she said, oh, this is my friend. He's got a house in Vanuatu. He needs me to pick him up. And I said, oh, I'm going to come with you. So anyway, he gets in the car and he says, who are you? And I say, oh, I'm Kat and I'm writing this book and she's my copy editor. He goes, I'm a publisher. I want to help you. So I moved in with him for a month in this beautiful home. Like I said, same street as Pat Rafter, on this gorgeous mansion on the beach. And he said, look, I need to get fit and lose weight. And that's what I do. I teach health and fitness and nutrition. So he goes, you get me fit and I'll help you with this book, like, to get it done. And he goes, don't write a how-to book, write a book about your life. You've been talking to me all month about your life. Write a book about your life. I'm like, cool, I'll do that. So that's when I wrote Never Let a Good Disaster Go to Waste. And then he said, when I finished that year, he goes, come over to my plantation on Vanuatu and I will help you publish it. So I had basically had my book done before I came here, and then I met this guy Alex, and then he really pulled a much better story out of me. So yeah, so it's a long story. Um, really, what you've asked me, how I did it, I really was challenged to sit down and write a book. Um, I wasn't a writer. I just had a story I wanted to tell. But I've always said my book will be a bestseller. It'll be a miniseries or a movie, and I'll be on Oprah or Ellen. So that is my goal. It's my dream, and because it will help so many people.
Yeah, wow,
And
that
it's a
is.
really good book now.
I guarantee it's a really good book. I can't wait to read it. And I also want to throw this out there. Oprah and Ellen, they're cool. One day when your book has been made into a movie and it's like number one at the film studios and whatnot, you can also tell people I was on Keeping It Rio back in the day when nobody knew who that guy even was.
It all
And we'll both be
started.
famous superstars by then. So this could be our initial contact. In 10 years from now, I'm going to be like, hey, Kat, remember that time? And of course, you won't remember me by
You
then,
heard it here
but I'll be
first.
that big of a star that you will
Exactly.
remember me. So that's goals for sure. What a cool way for
Mm-hmm.
everything to kind of fall into place, though. And it's weird how that works in the world where you just kind of run into people that you need to know at certain times. And it's just like, you know, what are the odds? It just happens that way, you know? And I'm kind of going through something similar right now myself with my professional life where something just kind of came out of nowhere that I wasn't expecting. And now I'm really excited because I think it's going to be a great opportunity. But it would have been something that I never would have even thought of. So it's really cool how when you stop and really look at how things play out in life, you had a plan and, you know, maybe you would have put out your initial book. Maybe it would have already been released out into the public and it would have sucked. Maybe it would have been awesome. And maybe that guy didn't know what he was talking about. But, you know, someone stood up and said, hey, you can do better. You can do something different. You completely
Mm-hmm.
changed and transformed the entire thing based off of that kind of chance meeting. So, what a cool story. I think that's really awesome. And I can't wait to see the miniseries. I'll definitely watch that because it sounds like you've had quite the journey, you know, throughout the course of your life. And that's what I love. I love talking to people. This podcast is a prime example. The only reason I do this is so that I can talk to people like you. You and I literally just met moments before we hit the record button on this. And it was because there's a Facebook group and I just put on there, I'd like to talk to interesting people. If anybody'd like to talk, let's do it. And I think that's really kind of cool, you know, and it brings people together that would have never met, would have never known each other's story. And I'm honored that we're able to talk today and that I can share your story because I think it's incredibly interesting. And, you know, I'm sure that there's going to be plenty of time down the road where be able to see much more of what's going on with you. So I think that's really cool. Let me ask you about the second
And
book
you know what,
though.
Chuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm all about people, and I invite everyone to come here and help me make chicken houses. Like Chuck, I'd love you to come over and make a chicken house with me, and you'd know a lot because you're keeping it Rio. You can come over, keep it Rio over here with some chicken
Right.
houses
Yeah. I
with
have a building
me.
background. I can
I'd
weave
love you
those
to come.
roofs together like a champion for sure. Let me ask you about the second book then. Okay. So the first book
Yeah.
has a unique story. You've done the entire process. You've got that first book done. Now it's not even been published yet, but you've decided, okay, I'm going to go ahead and write another one. What number one, was it just based on the fact that you enjoyed the first one so much or that you had so much more that you felt like you wanted to say? And how different was the second one experience wise versus the first? Did you get, obviously you didn't write the whole thing and then have someone tell you to do it over again. And you knew some people along the way. Did you work with the same group of people when you published the second one? And how did that second one compare to the first?
Well, the second, so the book was originally How to Get Over Betrayal in 12 Hours, and I wanted to tell people simply and quickly, do these 12 steps, these principles I came up with. And then then I decided to actually tell it through my story. So I realized the way I came up with my 12 principles is because in my life, I never let a good disaster go to waste. So I sort of, the two books are companion books. They actually go together. So they were actually written together. And then I just pulled the how to out of it and just kept never let a good disaster go to waste. It's my story of my life. And how I came up with the 12 principles. And the 12 principles are just the 12 principles with a lot of science and quotes and reasons why following these 12 principles will have you become a master of disaster. So people, if you want to get the 12 principles of how to become a master of disaster on my website, Finnerty.com, you can just click on get me the 12 principles and I'll send you the 12 principles of how to become a master of disaster.
Awesome. I know exactly what I'm doing after we hang up the recording today is I'm going to request the 12 steps. That is so cool. I'm absolutely in awe of this conversation because I didn't know what to expect coming in, and I'm sure it was the same for you, and I hope I've exceeded your expectations. But this has been so amazing, and I'm still just completely I'm not even over the fact that you're not sitting at a green screen, you know, somewhere in Texas or whatnot with that beautiful background.
No,
That's
when
a
I
real
move, it's like,
thing. It's amazing, and I
yeah,
am gonna
it's
come
a real
visit because
thing.
now I'm gonna put on my dream board. I'm gonna put a little chicken coop on there, and I'm gonna come visit. It might not be this coming year, but it'll be sometime in the not too distant future. I'm gonna come build a chicken coop over there because I think that would be a cool story for me to add to my repertoire as well. Um, the books are coming out here
I
in
would
the
love it.
next. Yeah, for sure, I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I tell people on my podcast that I'm going to do stuff, and then through the grace of God, somehow I get forced to end up having to keep my word. Like about 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, I told a guy that the next time I saw him, we would go do a long distance run. And I didn't want to do a long distance run. I thought I was on this podcast and I was going to be able to just, you know, whatever. I see this guy the very next week, and I had to run 3.5 miles because I said I was going to do it. So here publicly, I'm saying I will come to build a chicken coop because I think that's an amazing story. Um, Anybody that wants to get your book, is there going to be a pre-order? What's going to be the way that folks here in the United States or anywhere in the world? You said you're going to go on a worldwide book tour. Let me ask about that real quick before we start wrapping up. A worldwide book tour, what does that look like in your mind as far as, you know, are you going to come to San Antonio, Texas so I can get you to sign a copy?
Yeah,
All right. See, there
absolutely.
you
Yeah.
go. If you
I'm
come to
just,
San
you know
Antonio
what?
and sign my book, I'll build a chicken coop.
I
Oh, it may. Let's see. I gave her a second to see if she might be able to come back. Yeah, look, check it out. She was able to come back. Sometimes
You
you
there,
have
Chuck?
this. Yes, ma'am, I am. I was
I
waiting for you.
lost
I
you for a
figured
minute.
that was going to happen at least once. So no worries. I got you loud and
Okay.
clear.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot what the question was now.
I got thrown off right there as well. Oh yeah, the book tour, the
I
world tour. What's your world tour going to
the
look
book tour.
like?
So look, I just I very much just put things out into the world. I know I have, you know, people I know all over the world. I will just go everywhere and I just want to help people. So anyone that's suffering, I want to help them become a master of the disaster. And I want to keep sharing and spreading this word because so many people go through breakups and so many people go through divorces and they
Oh, yeah, sometimes paradise. 90% of the island doesn't have power, so let's see what we got here. We got a good 42 minutes in. I think we can limp this to the end. I think we can. Let's see. If not, I appreciate Kat for taking the time. This was amazing. We'll do this again sometime real soon. I'm right at 45 minutes for this episode, anyhow. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this episode of Keeping It Rio with Kat. Wait, let's see here. She's not connected. I think maybe the internet might not need to connect mic and cam before you can add. maybe having technical difficulties. So we appreciate Kat very much. This was an amazing conversation. We'll definitely do it again. I don't think it's going to come back up. So till next time.